Tyson Bagent's name slipping into a Vikings trade rumor is the kind of NFC North spark that can turn a quiet preseason into a street fight. Because when the purple and gold start sniffing around our quarterback room, every Bears fan feels that. Jolt in the chest, part insult, part warning shot. This isn't some faceless league transaction. It's a hypothetical that cuts right into our depth chart, right into the fragile chemistry Caleb Williams has been building with the guys who know his cadence, his timing, his tells. The report says it's unlikely, but when have unlikely and FC North rumors ever stay buried? Sam Howell's shaky training camp start gave life to the chatter, and even after he bounced back with an 11-13, 105-yard performance against Houston, the idea of Minnesota trying to pry away our QB2 refuses to die. And here's where it gets dangerous. This isn't about swapping backup for backup. It's about handing a divisional rival a player who's been marinating in our system, a player who could feed them intel on our protections, our audibles, our red zone packages. Bagent isn't just another arm. He's the guy who stood in at State Farm Stadium and managed the offense in a grinded-out win over Arizona. The guy who's shown he can take hits, deliver on 4th and goal, and still keep his eyes downfield. Heavy floated the price. Day 3 draft pick, like that's supposed to make it palatable. But any Bears fan who remembers trading talent inside the division knows those moves come back with teeth. This is where the stakes spike. If Minnesota's QB room stays unsettled behind rookie J.J. McCarthy, and if Brett Ripien can't leapfrog Howell in the pecking order, Bagent becomes more than a name in a rumor mill. He becomes a calculated target. And the biggest surprise hasn't even hit yet. Imagine late December, Soldier Field frozen, playoff seedings on the line, and the backup we traded across enemy lines comes trotting in because McCarthy went down. You don't think? He'd have every nuance of our coverage shells tattooed in his memory. Chicago-Minnesota trades are rare for a reason. It's not just front office tradition, it's survival instinct. The last time a deal even hinted at crossing this border, it died before ink touched paper. Because the cost of helping your rival, even accidentally, can echo for seasons. And while the front office debates Case Keenum's efficiency versus Bagent's upside, while the media nitpicks over a tipped interception versus mobility in the pocket, the truth is simpler. The Vikings are watching. They've already kicked. Around names like Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, and Jameis Winston. But proximity is power, and a quarterback in Chicago is just a phone call away. This is where it gets personal for the fan base. We've seen what happens when our roster decisions feed their momentum, and it's not a chapter we're eager to repeat. So the question hangs heavier than a winter sky over Lake Michigan. Would you weaken your own shield to blunt someone else's spear, knowing it might pierce you later? And I'll be honest with you, as much as I love Bagent's grit, the idea of him in purple makes my stomach turn. I'd rather watch him hold a clipboard here all season than celebrate a touchdown there even once. Some lines in this division. You just don't cross. If you're not ready to put your name on this decision, you've already lost the right to call yourself part of Bears Nation. Because what happens next will test the spine of this fan base like nothing since the snow slick drive that ended our 2018 run. Miami's interest isn't a whisper anymore. It's a drumbeat. Steady and insistent, echoing from every scout who watched Smith clamp down on those joint practice routes. And now Poles has to decide if holding the line means protecting the identity of this defense or clinging to sentiment while opportunity slides away. Picture the lakefront wind slicing through Soldier Field in December, lights blazing, and Smith jamming a receiver so hard the timing of the entire route tree collapses. That's what you're risking if you send him south. But here's where the season could crack wide open. A rival GM smelling leverage could slide into the conversation, pushing the price higher, and suddenly we're not just talking about Miami. We're staring down an NFC arms race that changes how we play January football. Then there's the locker room, veterans remembering the turnover carousel at corner and 10, rookies looking over their shoulders, and you have to ask if a mid-season shakeup creates urgency or fractures. Trust. And here's where it gets sharper. Smith isn't just filling a depth chart line. He's covering for a special teams unit that needs his tackling angles and bursts. A detailed loss in stat sheets, but burned into the eyes of coaches who lived the 0 to 16 grind. What if moving him forces a scheme shift? Just like when injuries in '06 made us pull Tillman inside and gamble outside. A gamble that worked once, but at the cost of consistency. This is where the cold math meets the hot blood of Chicago football. Cap space and picks are clean on paper, but they don't swat down a go route in the red zone with the NFC North on the line. Feel the roar of freezing fans when a third down. Pass hits the turf. Do you really trade that for a future asset? And what about Miami's counterplay? They land Smith, shore up their secondary, and suddenly they're the team no one wants to face in the wild card, while we're sitting here wondering how we got slower on the perimeter. Every call pulls. Takes between now and the deadline is a step closer to one of those moments we'll talk about for years. The kind you can still see in your mind's eye long after the game clock hits 0. It's Devin Hester cutting through the middle on that opening kickoff in the Super Bowl. The collective roar of a city exploding in disbelief. It's Erlicher chasing down Kurt Warner in the open field. The shock on Warner's face frozen in time as a linebacker moved like a corner. These moments don't just happen. They're born from a decision, a gamble, a belief that the right move at the right time can tilt the axis of an entire season. And right now, every vibration of Pole's phone carries that weight, the possibility that the next voice on the line could change the identity of this defense forever. But here's the final bend before the cliff. If this deal goes through, it will not be because of one practice or one game, but because someone in Hollis Hall decided that tomorrow's promise outweighs today's certainty, that the long-term gain of draft picks or cap space is worth the risk of losing a player who can swing a playoff game with a single snap. Bears history is littered with choices like this, some immortalized, others regretted, and this one will either be a case study in foresight or a cautionary tale we tell in the biting wind off Lake Michigan. And I'm looking right at you, Chicago, not as a reporter, but as someone who stood in the stands when the snow was coming in, sideways when the scoreboard said we were done, and still believed. Would you pull the trigger knowing it could define the next decade? Or would you plant your feet, stare down the offer, and hold on to a player who might just become the heartbeat of this defense? Picture the fourth quarter of a must-win December. Game at Soldier Field, the lights glaring off a frozen field, the crowd stopping so hard you can feel it in your chest. The ball leaves the quarterback's hand, heading toward the pylon, and there's Smith closing, leaping, knocking it away, and in that instant you know the season is still alive because he was there. Personally, I'd hold him. I've watched too many games turn on one snap. Too many playoff hopes die because one man wasn't in the right place at the right time. Smith feels like the kind of guy who delivers that snap when you need it most, the quiet professional who turns into a storm when the stakes hit their peak. Let the other teams make the easy trades and hope they work out. We're the Chicago Bears. We know that sometimes the smartest move is keeping the piece everyone else thinks you'll give up, and then letting him make them pay for ever thinking they could take him.